So today's session is going to be really, really interesting because it contains portions on telepathy and the mechanism of how you transfer thoughts, how you can communicate psychically. That is the mechanism of that is going to be discussed. Depending on the time, and of course, if people are interested, we can see whether that's the theory portion can have a practical component or not. So maybe I'll just start by sending a telepathic thought right away. And then when you see this recording or whenever the right time comes, you'll be able to receive the thought. It's really interesting the way the telepathy mechanism works. And for any of us who've been in pranic healing for any amount of time, especially if you've done pranic psychotherapy or if you've done even arhatic yoga, some of the techniques will seem absolutely intuitive. It's like, oh, it's that simple. We already know this. But when you go into the mechanisms of it, how it works and why it works, that's when you realize the brilliance of the teacher. We realize the genius of Master Choa Kok Sui, that he took all of these really complicated teachings, these really deep teachings, and he simplified it for us. But then he gave it to us as recommended reading so that when we read it and when we start to go through it, it comes to our mind saying, my God, it's amazing. So this pillar 5, the pillar of study, it has a very direct effect on, I personally feel, on pillar 1, because we begin to appreciate the genius of the teacher. And at least for me personally, I feel super grateful and really thankful to the teacher for his techniques, for his teachings, for giving us all these mechanisms, these tools to enhance our lives, and not just enhance the basic part of our lives, but to take it to whatever level we need to take it to. The empowerment is absolutely remarkable. So just having a moment of gratitude for the teacher and the system of pranic healing and arhatic yoga. So let's just wait for a couple of minutes while more people join in. The session that we are seeing on the screen right now, you can see my screen, right? The presentation screen. Okay, good. So the beauty of thought waves and thought forms is that we have already covered it in great depth in 2 of the seminars before, in the thought forms book, and of course in parts of astral body. So I will not spend too much time talking about thought waves and thought forms. Just give 2 of the very basic summaries of it and then move on to the more exciting chapters. Okay, so right, it's been a few moments. Let us begin with a prayer of thanksgiving, with an invocation. So everyone, just keep your back straight, keep your chin parallel to the floor, keep your shoulders relaxed and down. Take a deep breath. Inhale and exhale very slowly. Inhale and exhale very deeply. Relax your body. Connect your tongue to your palate. Be aware of your physical body. Be aware of your energy body. Mentally say, I am not the body. The body is just the vehicle of the soul. Be aware of your emotional body. Be aware of your astral body. Mentally say, I am not the emotions. Be aware of your mental body and say, I am not the thoughts. The emotions and the thoughts are the products of the soul. I am not even the mind. The mind is just a subtle instrument of the soul. I am not the body, nor the emotions, nor the thoughts, nor the mind. I am the soul. I am a spiritual being of divine intelligence, divine love, divine power. I am that I am. Now be aware of your physical body dissolving away, your energy body, your astral body, your mental body, all of them dissolving away. And all that is left is brilliant light expanding in all directions. I am the soul. I am that I am. I am a child of God. I am connected to God. I am one with God. I am one with the divine spark within me. Now take a deep breath and feel the light within you glow, grow, and expand. Inhale and exhale. Inhale and exhale. I am a spiritual being of divine intelligence, divine love, and divine power. Spiritually, I am one with all. Spiritually, there is only oneness. Now be aware of yourself as a spiritual being, as a child of God, and then say to the Supreme God, Divine Father, Divine Mother, to my spiritual teacher, Master Chua Kok Sui, to Lord Mahaguruji Mei, to all the spiritual teachers, the holy gurus, holy masters, saints, archangels, holy angels, to the spiritual helpers, to all the great, great ones. We humbly invoke for your blessings of divine light, divine love, divine power, for inner healing, physical healing, for divine help, divine guidance, and divine protection. Thank you for the blessings of love and wisdom to understand the subject of the mental body, the workings of the mental body, the functions of the mental body, and to use this understanding and awareness to become a better person, to become a better soul. I invoke for your help, your guidance, and your protection that I may grow spiritually and that I may help spread the light, that I may spread the teachings, that I become a being of hope, radiating hope, help, health, and healing wherever I am. I invoke for your blessings. I thank you. I thank you in full faith. Take a deep breath. Just absorb the blessings coming in from God. Exhale. Inhale the blessings. And as you exhale, share it with your family. Inhale the blessings. Exhale and share it with your entire building, the locality, the area you live in. Inhale. And as you exhale, share it with the rest of the world. Inhale one more time. And as you exhale, feel the light of your being expanding in all directions, sharing your light with all sentient beings, bringing love, light, and power, help, healing, and protection to all. I am that I am. Now bring your consciousness back to your mental body, lower down into your astral body, lower down into your energy body, and down into the physical body, and scatter your consciousness throughout your physical body. Simultaneously be aware of every part of your physical body, your face, your shoulders, your spine, your abdomen, your entire torso, your hands and legs, your entire physical body. Be aware of your physical body throughout. Be aware. Now, move your fingers, move your toes, open your eyes with a big smile. Welcome back to the physical body. And as we are back in the physical body, we are going to start talking about the mental body. So let's begin. So this part over here, thought waves and thought forms, as you mentioned, we've covered this part in a lot of detail before. And the beauty of thought waves and thought forms is that a thought wave doesn't convey any one specific idea. It takes a lot of thoughts, a lot of energies, and replicates and produces itself. So if you think of an ocean or waves in an ocean, there's not one single drop of water or one single bit of water that comprises any one part of the wave. The wave is comprised of all of these things together. So let's give it makes more sense if I give an example. So if there's a person sitting down and they're thinking devotional thoughts, then the thought waves radiating from that person will be the thought waves of devotion. Now, the person may be thinking upon one particular subject, could be thinking about, say, Lord Krishna or Master Jesus, or could be thinking about Allah, could even be thinking about their beloved, their darling. Okay. The thought waves will contain the energy, the wave of devotion. And as it goes out, as it radiates outward from this person, it will attract more and more energies of devotion. But devotion towards whom, devotion from whom, that will not be known. The thought waves, therefore, convey the character of the thought, but not the subject. So, as the example says, if a Hindu sits wrapped in devotion to Krishna, the thought waves which pour forth from him stimulate devotion in all of those who come under their influence. So, if there's a Hindu person and there's a Muslim person over there, that person will also feel the energy of devotion. But his or her thought of devotion may be directed to the Prophet, may peace be upon him, or be directed to Allah. For any other person, someone from the Jewish faith or someone from the Christian faith or any other faith, the object of their devotion will be for whoever they personally find alignment to. But the energy of devotion will be present regardless. A very good example of this in a more contemporary setting would be love songs. So if you're sitting down and there's a love song that comes on the radio, from when we were young and those songs had some sort of meaning for us. So first it's going to make us feel very nostalgic and we're going to remember some memory associated with that time. So all our friends will be sitting there, they will be having their corresponding recollection of whoever it is that love song reminds them of. They'll all not be thinking of the same person. Now, of course, if you're in college and you have a crush on one person, all of you might well be thinking of that one and same person. But in general, the character of the thoughts is not known, but the general wave is one of love or devotion. Correspondingly, if this is a good example of devotion, it could also mean something else. And we can see that example in the world right now, where there are many countries which are affected in socially, politically, financially, and the thought waves which are radiating from there are the thought waves of stress, anxiety, fear, uncertainty. So we don't know what they're uncertain about. We don't know what the object of their uncertainty is or arises from, but we know for a fact that they are uncertain. And sometimes, this is where we're leading into the telepathy part. You may have noticed this. Suppose there's a friend or a partner, someone who is very close to you or who you are very close to. And if that person seems off in their behavior, maybe it's a normal conversation, but something sounds a little off. The replies are shorter or something. You just ask, hey, is everything okay with you? You've noticed this, right? You have a tendency to ask, is everything all right? Why? Because that person is radiating the waves of maybe some sort of stress, or maybe they're really worried, but you feel that. That's when you're really, really connected. So these are, we had a topic on soulmates many moons ago, and there was one of the things that you're so deeply connected, the energy is so deeply connected that you kind of pick up on the energy of the other person. And it doesn't matter if they're not in the same room with you, they could be halfway across the world, but the thought wave reaches you and you can resonate with it. So yes, as Sarjit has very correctly mentioned here on the chat, thought waves are very theme based, they're very thematic based. And it must be noted that the thought wave or the thought vibration conveys the character of the thought, but never the subject. So from thought waves, we now just come down to the more specific thought forms. Again, an entire chapter book by itself, not going into any detail, but recapitulating three of the primary points. One, the quality of the thought determines the color. Two, the nature of the thought determines the form. And the definitiveness of the thought determines the clarity or the outline. So if someone is thinking a thought of love, then the color is going to be very pink. Now, if the love is one towards God and towards devotion, it's going to be very light, babyish kind of pink. But if it's a selfish kind of love, a possessive kind of love, the color will, of course, be darker. There'll be shades of darkness in that thought form. The nature of the thought determines the form. So if it's an all-encompassing kind of love, that I love everybody, every person, every being, all animals, all plants, it's going to be a very wave-like reaching forward. But a selfish kind of love, that, okay, I love this person and I want his attention or her attention all the time, it's going to have the form of like a hook or a clause. So that's the second part. The third part, the definitiveness of the thought determines the clearness of outline. So you think, yeah, okay, I love everyone. I feel love towards all the people, every person, every being. But you don't have a fixed idea in your mind. So today you might be feeling sad for some children somewhere. Tomorrow you might be feeling sad about the animals somewhere. Or you might just be feeling sad about the country or fire somewhere. Your thought form that is created has the general energy of love, has the form of love, but it's not very clear. It is vague. It is wavy. But if you have a very clear thing that, okay, I know that I love everybody, but I can't help everybody. I do, however, want to say spread the teachings. I want to spread love and wisdom. How do I want to do that? I want to do so by teaching. I want to do so by reading, by learning. So then the thought form becomes much more clearer. Okay, I am going to be teaching. I have the energy of books and and teachings within me. So that's what I'm going to take forward. So the higher beings, they can see the thought forms, they can see the general tendency and energy in the aura and say, okay, this person can do service for medicine. This person can do service for animals. This person can do service for teaching, etc., etc., etc. So even though we all have love within us, the energy of love within us, the way we express that love is, of course, always very, very different. And this is where the basic distinction of thought waves, thought forms comes in. Why is it relevant? Because we'll have to see how it reaches out, which now brings us to this amazing, amazing center on thought transference. Have you heard the term telepathy? Have you experimented with telepathy? I'm sure all of us have tried it at one point. I remember I was really young and I tried to send thoughts to my mom. I think I was sending thoughts of not wanting to go to school, not wanting to go to school, not wanting to go to school. And I was so concentrated on the thought of not, I was like, I was in class 5 or something, 9 or 10 years old. I was so concentrated on the thought of not wanting to go to school. I didn't even realize when she got me dressed up, got me packed, and I was already in school. So that was an example of telefailure. But nevertheless, the subject has always been very interesting. So the term telepathy, the word tele means distance. Anything with the word tele in it means distance. Okay. And pathos is to do with feeling. The word pathy comes from the word pathos, which means to feel. So telepathy, which means feeling at a distance. Pranic healers, what do you feel at a distance? Interesting, right? So as pranic healers, we already have a training, have a basic background in feeling at a distance. And therefore, for ordinary people, the word telepathy is always confined to the transmission of feelings and emotions. In general, telepathy means feeling energy at a distance. Feeling energy at a distance. Pranic healers, you know what the word is. Now, generally nowadays, it's used almost synonymously, very exclusively with transference of thought. And it may be taken to cover any transfer of an image, a thought, an idea, or a feeling from one person to another person by non-physical means. So there are three ways, there are three possibilities in telepathy, and there may be a direct communication between two brains at the etheric level, between two astral bodies, and two mental bodies. So brain, astral body, mental body, transmitter, receiver, transmitter, receiver, etheric brain to another etheric brain, astral body to another astral body, mental body to another mental body. Now you can of course say that, will it go from an etheric brain to a mental body? Why not? It's possible. Is it effective? Is it clear? We don't know. So the three basic processes, direct communication in telepathy, happen between the brains, between the astral bodies and the mental bodies. Now, let's go on to the mechanism of this, how this works. A thought causes vibrations first in the mental body and then in the astral body. And then that vibration takes place in the etheric brain and finally the dense molecules of the physical brain. So thought happening in the mental body, then goes on to the astral body, then to the etheric brain, and finally the physical brain. By the brain vibrations, the physical ether, the physical energy is affected, and the waves passed outwards until they reach another brain. And these waves, they then set up vibrations through the etheric and dense particles. So the mechanism is basically very simple. Mental body vibrates, goes down to the astral body, which vibrates, which goes down to the energy brain, which then goes down to the physical brain. And these vibrations, they radiate outwards, outwards, until it reaches the etheric brain of the other person. And then the corresponding vibrations are felt and set up. This is deeply connected with the pineal gland. Okay, you know the pineal gland located in the center of the brain? The pineal gland is the organ of thought transference. Okay, the pineal gland is the organ of thought transference, just as the eye is the organ of vision. The pineal gland in most people is very, very rudimentary. It's still evolving. It's not retrograding, as in it's not becoming calcified or it's not becoming older. And it's possible to make it evolution much faster so that it can do its work better. The pineal gland is basically what we're going to work on with the organ of thought transference. So if you are doing any spiritual practices, which is working on the pineal gland, which is working on the enhancement of the pineal gland, to a certain extent, you are developing your telepathic abilities, both to transmit and to receive. There's a question over here. What determines the speed of the transfer of thought vibration? What determines the speed of the transfer of thought vibration? We're going to come to that in some time when we talk about the mechanism of it. Now, in the first method, which is between the brains, we may call the physical or etheric method. So a thought causes vibrations first in the mental body and then in the astral body, in the etheric brain, and finally in the dense molecules of the physical brain. But by the brain vibrations, the physical ether, the physical energies are affected. And the waves, they pass outwards till they reach another brain. And it affects the vibrations there. So now, if a person thinks very strongly of a very concrete form, if a person in the physical brain, he thinks of a very strong image, he then makes the same form in etheric matter. So the physical brain conceptualizes a concrete shape, a concrete form, and that shape and form is reproduced in the etheric matter. And in the effort of making this image, he then sends out the etheric waves in every direction. It's not the image itself which is sent out, but a set of vibrations which then reproduce the image. So this process is somewhat similar to the telephone, where the voice itself is not conveyed, but a number of electrical vibrations are set up by the voice. They enter the receiver, they're converted again into the receiver on the other end. So what determines the speed of the transfer of thought vibration? It's basically the set of vibrations of reproducing the image. The clarity of thought determines the speed of transfer. The more clear the thought, the faster the image goes. So I was saying in my mind, in my 9-year-old mind, I was saying, okay, I will not go to school. I will not go to school. I will not go to school. I was so focused on not going to school. I realized later that the brain is incapable of processing the word not. So like if I tell you right now, do not think of a pink colored elephant. In fact, just don't think of an elephant at all. Whatever you do, everyone, do not think of an elephant. And especially do not think of the elephant sitting on a blue colored ball. Please don't be thinking of a blue colored ball. Please do not be thinking, absolutely not, of an elephant on this ball. Any luck? We love giving elephants as examples in this room. I will still go back to the session 2 times back where we had a phenomenal discussion regarding elephants and lions and whatnot. So therefore, the brain does not process the word not. So if you want to have clarity in your mind and send the telepathic image out, focus on the positive end result. So instead of me desiring to not go to school, I should have probably done telepathy for staying at home. So you focus on the positive end result. The brain doesn't find it easy to process the word not. Likewise, if you want to convey to someone to be on time, don't tell them, or rather try saying be on time instead of saying don't be late. Don't do this, replace it with do that. Don't say this, replace it with say that. And that's why you have the virtues, and the way they work is you replace the negative with the positive. By the way, here's a shout out for the seminar on virtues, which is coming up. We have 6 international speakers talking about the virtues. The details are there on the pranaworld.net Facebook page and Instagram. Please do sign up. It's going to be 6 speakers talking amazingly about 6 virtues and their connection in our lives. Okay, and one of our speakers is our beloved Dr. Fazeli, who will be speaking in the seminars. So please do check that out if you haven't yet already. I'm sending out the thought form and thought waves of making you join the seminar. So we have a question over here. Should we visualize in a third eye since the pineal gland don't overthink it. Don't overthink it. Just visualize. Because when you're thinking, you don't know whether you're using your third eye or using your fourth eye or using anything else. You're just creating the thought. Okay, so don't go into that detail of nitty-gritty, just create the thought. Because the moment you go into the mechanism of, okay, am I using this or am I using that, your thought becomes very amorphous. What you want is a clear thought. Okay, so should you visualize we already answered that question. Why does the brain discount no? Why cannot the word not? That's just the way the brain works. The brain tends to be more visual. Your brain works on things which it can see. rather than what it cannot see. So when I tell you, do not visualize something, your brain just focuses on the something. So one way in which you can make your techniques, your processes more powerful, focus on your positive desired end result. Okay. Don't focus on what you don't want. Because as you focus on what you don't want, well, that's pretty much what you end up attracting. Okay. Now, so we've got a very nice question over here. A mother who recognizes her child is hurt somewhere far away. Is that in any way a thought vibration? The answer is yes. Short answer. The detailed answer of why and how, that's more towards the end of this session. We'll be covering it. Okay. Now, let's go a little bit deeper into this. So it's not the image itself which is sent out, but the vibrations. So if anyone thinks very intently on a single idea with concentration and sustained attention, then that person will become conscious of a quiver or a creeping feeling. It's been compared to the creeping of an ant in the pineal gland. Now, these are the words which are used in the book. I do not know how the ant feels in the pineal gland, but suffice to say, you will feel a vibration or a quivering deep within. This quivering takes place in the etheric area, in the etheric matter, which permeates the gland and causes a slight current. And this current gives rise to the creeping feeling in the denser molecules of the gland. Now, if the thought is strong enough to cause the current, then the thinker knows that he or she has been successful in bringing his thought to a pointed form and a strength which can make it capable of being transmitted. So you know that you've very successfully, very concretely transmitted your thought when you feel a vibration in your pineal gland. And the vibration doesn't mean like it's shaking. It means that it feels like an ant crawling in the middle of the head. The vibrations in the etheric areas of the pineal gland sets up more waves in the surrounding ether, in the surrounding energy, like waves of light. Only these waves of light are much smaller and way more rapid. These vibrations, they pass out in all directions and they set the surrounding ether in motion. And these etheric waves in turn produce vibrations in the ether of the pineal gland in another brain. And from those vibrations are transmitted to the astral and mental bodies very quickly, very rapidly. So thought in the brain, pineal gland, concentration of thought goes out. The other person receives the thought, goes into the brain, and it is then transmitted rapidly into the etheric, into the astral, into the mental. And in doing so, as it permeates all through, it reaches the consciousness of the person. Now, if the receiving person, if the receiving pineal gland cannot reproduce the vibrations, then the thought will come, but it will pass away unnoticed, making no impression. It has been likened to the wave of light being shine into the eyes of a blind person. So it's very important that it doesn't just reach the pineal gland, but it has to set up a succeeding vibration, which then traverses and touches the etheric matter, the astral matter, and the mental matter, and therefore makes an image, an impression in the consciousness. If it doesn't create an impression, the thought comes and the thought goes. That's it. So that's the first method, between the brain to brain. Now, in the second method, which is astral method of thought transference, the etheric brain doesn't enter into the picture at all. The communication happens directly from one astral body to the other astral body. And the third method, where the mental method, the thinker creates a thought on the mental plane. He doesn't send it down to the physical brain, but he immediately just transmits it directly to the mental body of another thinker. So you have a physical brain. It has to go through the entire process of sending a vibration right over there, and then that vibration has to rise up into the astral, into the mental. For the astral vibration, they just send the vibration straight to the other astral. For the mental one, they're not even involving any of the other bodies. They just create a thought on the mental plane, sends it directly to the mental body of the other thinker. The power to do this with focus, with deliberation, implies a very high mental evolution. This is a much, much more evolved form of thought transference than the physical method, because the sender must be self-conscious on the mental plane in order to knowingly exercise this ability. You have to be able to do this in a very conscious fashion. You cannot do this very casually. So in order to be able to do so consciously implies a much higher state of evolution, a much more spiritual person, as it were. When humanity is more evolved, this will probably be the most common method of communication. And apparently it is already employed by the masters, the spiritual masters, in the instruction of their pupils. And in this way, they can convey with ease the most complicated ideas. So imagine this, you've got a holy master, you've got a master, a lord, transmitting information, great deals of information directly into the mental body of the student. And the student is absorbing all the information. But the student then has to put in years and years of effort to validate that information, to experiment, and then to create a working hypothesis or a thesis around it. So it's not just that the thought has been transferred. That's good. But then you've got to take the thought, you've got to validate the thought, and then you've got to create a structure with the thought. So 30, 40 years worth of ideas can be transmitted in 5 or 10 minutes from mental body to mental body. But then from the mental goes to the astral, goes to the brain, and then they have to create another method where it's possible. So it's a humongous amount of information transference or information download. Okay. So this is what happens when they're consciously transferring the thought. What happens when it's unconscious? What happens when it's unconscious? If a person leaves their mind blank for some time, there are plenty of residual thoughts which have been generated by other people. And these residual thoughts, they start drifting upon it. In most cases, they don't make too much of an impression. The thought comes and the thought goes. But occasionally, they have a very serious effect. Sometimes a thought comes which attracts the attention of this person so much that this person takes this thought and says, okay, this is my thought, it's my idea. And then that thought takes another strength, becomes stronger, and then he sends this thought out, which goes on to affect other people. A person, therefore, is not responsible for a thought which comes into their mind, which may not be their own thought, but someone else's. However, if a person takes a thought which has come in, dwells upon it, thinks about it, and then sends it out with more strength, then that person is definitely responsible. So think of instances, this is also very karmically connected. Think of instances when someone says something, you're having a gossip, you're having a chat with your friends. Have you seen this? Have you seen that? A thought comes into your head and you say, okay, no big deal. You let the thought go. But then suddenly something strikes in your mind. Why did the person say this? Why did the person say that? How do I work with this? How do I work with that? The thought starts building upon your mind. And then you say, okay, enough. And you get rid of the thought. Or you send it out of your mind. But that thought form has now been strengthened. Suppose someone had criticized somebody. Could be a political leader, could be a friend, could be a boss, anyone. And now suddenly in your mind, you have strengthened this thought form with your own ideas, with your own concepts, and you've sent it out. And then it goes out and affects other people. You are then responsible for sending out this thought. So imagine the degree of mental purity, mental consciousness and concentration which you must have, that you can't just send out thoughts at random. You must have clarity in your mind. You must have a lot of inner purification. That's why Master Choa, he says, there's a quotation, again, I don't remember the exact words. He says that a person who is upright, will not allow the mind to indulge in unwholesome thoughts. Do you remember this quote? I think it's there in the Golden Lotus Sutras. A person who is upright will not allow his mind to indulge in unwholesome thoughts, which means that yes, a thought has come to you. Fine, it's come to you. But if the thought spends some time in your mind and then it goes out, you are responsible for what happens. You're responsible for the outcome. Now, of course, if it's just an ordinary person who has no spiritual training, has no spiritual aspirations, then okay, it doesn't make that much of a difference. It just happens. But a person who knows, and who knows the outcome, who knows the consequences, in that case, there is a certain amount of responsibility, a certain amount of karma, which comes into the picture. Now, such a mixture of thoughts from many sources can come from many sources and can have any kind of thoughts. But any one of those thoughts can start a line of thought, can start a chain of thought, and so the mind starts thinking on its own accord. So your mind must also be kept pure, because the like energies attract. Why would your mind attract those kind of thoughts from other sources? So again, a person who is upright will not allow their mind to indulge in unwholesome thoughts, whether they receive it, whether they send it. So purification is super important. Okay, we have a question over here. In general day-to-day, say a classroom or office discussions, we absorb each other's thoughts. But when we resist it, does it still transfer to others? If you're resisting it, okay, think of it, have you played table tennis or ping pong? The thought comes to you, you can just let your paddle go and the thought goes away. But if you resist it, if you try to send it back, boom, then you just send it back to someone else. So it can have a boomerang kind of effect. So the best thing is, in this case, you don't try to resist, you don't try to block or this or that. You just enhance your character. You just have so much purification that the grosser quality of thoughts, the lower vibrations, do not even come to you. So in the context for this, how we can do this, if you remember, I think in the second or third discussion of the mental body, we discussed that there are 7 subplanes in the mental matter, the 4 subplanes of the mental matter and the 3 higher subplanes of the causal matter. That's basically higher vibration. So as you the soul, purify yourself, the quality, the energy of your mental body, of your causal body, they also rise up. So naturally, the quality of thoughts that also come to you, they also have to set a certain standard. A person who is really, really spiritual would not be that interested in talking about war or talking about fighting, right? But a person who is, of course, really, really base, has these gross tendencies, they would be like, tell me the gossip, no? Tell me what's happening here and there, no? They want to attract all those kinds of thoughts. Sometimes you meet up with friends, hey, forget this, forget that, tell me what's the latest with here, tell me what's the latest over there. That happens. That's because we are fluctuating, we are vibrating between purification and not so much purification. So all these kinds of thoughts affect us. But as we consciously purify, as we set our mind that, okay, we are not going to be entertaining, we are not receptive, we are not even caring of grosser thoughts, then those gross thoughts don't even come to us. So the question of hitting it or blocking it or all these kind of things, it doesn't happen. In fact, towards the later part of this book, we have a portion on the shielding or creating a shell for blocking these thoughts and when these shields should be used. We'll come to that in some time. So yeah, many people, if they were to examine the stream of thoughts which pass through their minds, they'd probably be really, really surprised to discover how many idle and useless ideas enter and leave their minds in a short period of time. Not even 25% of these are their own thoughts. Thought just comes, they think about it, and then if they were to really examine, like, why did I think of this? Why did I think of that? There was a story. Um, there's a story of a person who suddenly one day had a desire. I'm not forgetting the exact story, but he had a sudden desire to buy a gun and then shoot somebody with it. This was a very peaceful guy, a very laid back character, and he suddenly wanted to buy a gun and then actively go and shoot someone with it. And he was completely flummoxed. How did this happen? Why did this come to me? Some days later, he realized that his neighbor, who was going through a really difficult time in his life, had actually got a gun, was going to shoot somebody. So that thought form, that thought wave was very explosive and it traveled throughout. And this guy at his home, he was chilled out, he was laid back, his mind was blank. And that thought came to him and had an effect on him, and he suddenly became violent. So all of these energies and tendencies, if we were to sit down and examine how much of this is actually ours, how much of it is coming from someone else, we would find that most of these thoughts are just idle, useless, not relevant. Not even 25% of it are their own thoughts. So 75% is garbage thought from somewhere else. In most cases, these are quite useless, and their general tendency is most likely to be evil than to be good. Now, we grow up surrounded by an atmosphere which is crowded with thought forms. You go to work, you are at work, you are traveling, you are surrounded all the time with thought forms, with certain ideas, certain prejudices, certain way of looking at things, certain perspectives. All of these thought forms, they bombard us from the time we are born to the time that we die. In fact, it is possible that we are bombarded with these thought forms even before we are born. As unborn fetuses, as our mothers, they are subjected to those ideas. That's why in many spiritual practices, you will find the spiritual teacher saying that when a woman is pregnant, she should surround herself with objects that evoke positive psychological response. She should read books on spirituality, good ideas, good thoughts, good things. Why? Because those energies, those vibrations have an impact on the unborn child. So even before we are born, we already have inherited certain prejudices, certain preconceived ideas, simply based on what's happening in the environment. The solution, of course, is to purify the environment, but everyone, nearly everyone, is dominated by the energy of the nation, of the country. Public opinion, once formed, it stays and sways the mind of the great majority and unceasingly acts upon the brains and awakening in them certain vibrations. Sleeping and waking, no matter if you're sleeping, no matter if you're waking up, no matter you're working, these influences, these vibrations, they play upon us, and our very unconsciousness makes them more effective. We don't even know when they've come on to us, but they're there all the time. Most people, they are receptive rather than taking an initiative. Their nature is that they'll receive ideas rather than enact ideas. So they almost act as automatic reproducers of the thought. And so whenever the thought reaches them, it magnifies and the prejudice grows. It's what we call public opinion or mob mentality or herd mentality. Okay. An inevitable result of this happens is that nations, they receive ideas or impressions from other nations and then they act upon their own. So if you have two neighboring countries which historically don't get along, if one country does something, the other country reacts very, very aggressively. All the people in the country, the public opinion is really, really aggressive. Someone says something in some country far away, the people over here, they get really, really affected. Why? Because those thought forms are continuously, those energies and vibrations are continuously acting upon them. And these people, they have no control of what's happening. They simply add on their own vibrations, thus making the problem compounded. So each person, every group of persons, instead of blaming one another for their own difference of opinion, should ideally sit down, understand the common path, understand the middle path, and then sort things out. But this is the ideal situation. We don't know yet as to when it will happen. Now, the book says most people never make an effort at genuine discrimination. Most people never make any real effort at real discrimination on their own, and they are unable to shake themselves free of the influence of the great crowd of thought forms which constitute public opinion. Hence, they never really see the truth at all. They don't even know of the existence of it, and they're simply satisfied that, okay, everyone's saying this, so it must be true. Everyone says it, so it has to be true. For the spiritual person, for a person on the spiritual path, the first necessity is to attain a clear and unprejudiced view of everything. You have to see things as it really is. You have to see things as they really are and not what other people are saying. So just because someone is saying something or a group of people are claiming something, it doesn't necessarily mean that's the truth. You must validate it for yourself. And the sign of a person who's on the spiritual path is that they start questioning. They ask, why do I think? Why do I have this opinion of what my thoughts are? Okay, now let's just move on to the next slide. Okay, now this is a very interesting example. The example that's given over here is connected to a teacher and a student. So another typical example given is that of the current of thoughts which flow out from a lecturer and the other currents of comprehension and appreciation which rises from the audience. So you've got a speaker, okay, in a large hall who is lecturing, and all the people in that lecture hall, they're receiving that information. Now, it often happens that the energy which the speaker gives out, it awakens a similar response, a sympathetic response in the mental body of the audience. So the vibration goes out from the speaker, the vibration has a resonating effect on the mental body of all the students, of all the listeners, and they are able to understand. They're able to very clearly comprehend what the teacher said. Later, however, when the teacher is no longer there, the speaker's stimulus is no longer there, the students, they look at each other and say, what just happened? What did he say? What was that discussion about? They just completely blank. And at that point of time, they were so clear. Why? Because the teacher's vibrations were there. They were in the aura of the teacher and their mental body was upgraded. But they're out of the aura of the lecturer, they're out of the aura of the teacher, and suddenly the thing which was so clear to them becomes completely dull. That's what happens. Someone's asking, like this classroom, I have sent a very clear telepathic thought form to you. You will have continuous mental clarity. So be it. Let's invoke for mental clarity. We invoke for mental clarity, right? Okay. So critical thinking, on the other hand, for those of you who are watching the recording of this, may you have mental clarity at all levels at all times. Critical thinking, on the other hand, it sets up an opposite state of vibration. Okay, so you've got a speaker who is sending a thought. You've got a person who's ready to criticize. So what happens? Will the thoughts merge? Will they go around smoothly? No, they're going to fight. They're going to clash. So critical thinking, on the other hand, it sets up a stream, a bunch of vibrations which interfere. And anyone who has seen this effect, anyone who has witnessed this effect, they likely forget. So think of this happening. You've got a teacher in a classroom, not this classroom, who is saying something. And you got one student, the troublemaker, who goes up and decides to refute the teacher. So in the next 20 or 30 minutes of the class, nobody remembers what the teacher said. Nobody remembers what the student said. All they remember is there was chaos in the class. So in order for thought transference to happen, the mental body, the astral body, the brain itself, it must be in a state of purification. It must be in a state of quietness. Similarly, when someone is studying, when someone is reading, a person's thoughts may attract the attention of the writer of the book. The writer of the book might be in his astral body during sleep or even after death. The writer may thus be drawn to the student, thus causing the student to be enveloped in the atmosphere of the writer as potently as if the writer was physically present. This is a very simple paragraph, but it contains a great, great truth. I invite you to meditate upon these words because they have profound, profound impact. A person, when they're reading a book, they may attract the attention of the writer. And this writer might be sleeping. The writer might even be dead. But the energy of the writer will be attracted to the student. The energy of the teacher, instead of writer, let me say teacher. If you're reading a book by your teacher and your teacher is no longer physically alive, when you read the books, you are creating a sense of oneness with your teacher. And it's as if the teacher's energy is enveloping you. And so you gain a kind of clarity, as if the teacher was physically in front of you, teaching you, explaining it to you. Amazing, isn't it? Absolutely amazing. So we should read books more often. And if there's a particular teacher who we really love and look up to, we should read his books more often. So anyway, similarly, the thought of the student may attract to himself the thoughts of other persons who have studied the same subject. So if you have a person who is thinking of books on the physical, not the physical body, the astral body, mental body, causal body, and so on, you will have a group of people, like-minded people who join in. So again, if you look at this particular group, we are getting more and more people who have the similar kind of vibration, the similar kind of interest. We're seeing the same faces, we're seeing newer faces coming in. So we attract, like energies basically attract. And that's the positive side of things. Let's now look at the negative side of things. It talks about gossip and scandal, and the injury caused by gossip and scandal is immeasurable. The student will recollect the strong amount of negativity which was launched against these evil practices in a book called At the Feet of the Master. So there's a book called At the Feet of the Master, and the masters over there, they're very, very strongly, very clearly saying, you should not gossip, you should not get involved in scandal. The form which the criticism of a true spiritual person takes will be a happy kind. But criticism, oh my God, that is to be completely, completely avoided. Therefore, the possibility or the inevitability of being able to affect others for good or for evil using thought power alone places a tremendous instrument in the hands of all those who choose to use it. So astromental images or thought forms with which emotion of feeling is also associated, it plays a big, big role in making karmic links with other people. It's very simply put, if you have a thought about a person, about a group, about a situation, and you feel about it very strongly, so much so that your astral body is affected, you are creating a karmic link. You are definitely generating a karmic link. So to take a very extreme example, a person may harbor a lot of resentment and hatred towards another person, wants to take revenge, and creates a thought of murder. The creator of this thought, therefore, has created a karmic link to this victim, to the person, even though he has never seen him on the physical plane. He may just have a memory of it, but the karma of murder has now been created in the mental body, in the astral body. So this person, therefore, will be subjected to working out the karma of some form of violence. Let's put this into context. Let's put this into the pranic healing context. Master Chua says, you must purify yourself. First, you have to master verbal nonviolence. Don't say negative things. Then you may master emotional nonviolence and mental nonviolence. So we have negative thoughts, we have negative feelings, but we shouldn't be so quick to criticize all the time. I can say this from personal example, and some of my very, very, very close friends, they will know this, that I tend to be very mentally very sharp. If there's something which I like, I'll be talking about it. But if it's something I don't like, I'll be talking about it more and more. And so at certain points of time in my life, it has happened that I've had to go to them, to these very close people, and say, I need your help because certain things in my life are going out of my control. And very gently, they will come and say, you know what, maybe you should not criticize these people. I know you mean well. I know that you want to improve the overall situation, but try not to express your unhappiness in such a sharp way. So for me personally, and I think it's applicable for a lot of people on planet Earth right now, we should be slow to criticize. We should not be so quick to criticize because it creates a karma which comes back and affects us. And we never know when it's going to come and affect us. We never know in what situation it's going to come back to us. So in general, the mental images which a person makes largely influence the future environment. So in such a similar style, in such a manner, people attract other people to them in their future lives. So if I'm constantly criticizing right now, I will attract very critical people in my future lives. Could be this lifetime, could be some other lifetime. But if I'm also very nurturing, then I will be karmically entitled to attract people who are also very, very nurturing. I seem to have done a little bit of both because I have some super, super nurturing friends and some people who are super, super critical. So I guess we're working on the middle path. Point being, be nice. Okay, so you've got a question on the chat. Let's look at a parent and child relationship. Is pointing out the shortcomings also karmically damaging? No, it's not. Why? Because if you point out the shortcomings of a child, what is the intention? The intention is not to criticize. The intention is not to hurt. The intention is to guide, to nurture. For example, if a child is going into the kitchen and wants to touch the stove, the hot stove, you as the parent, you will say, don't do that. Don't touch the hot stove. Don't go into the kitchen. Is that karmically bad? No, because you're preventing an accident from happening. Your negativity here is directed because of a positive outcome. Now, if the child goes and touches the hot stove and gets burnt, well, the child has learned its lesson. But you also did your duty by pointing out the shortcoming. Now, that's a very basic kind of physical example. This can have many, many layers and nuances to it. We don't have the time to get into all of it. But if you're motivated by love and you express it in a loving way, there are many, many people, many friends who will say, hey, I only want the best for you. Therefore, stop seeing this person. Don't do this kind of work. You should not work anymore. You should do a business. No, that's just, no. You should understand who are your genuine well-wishers. Those who are really out to help you, vis-a-vis those who are just out to feel good about themselves. So the motivation, loving kindness is the main thing. You should not use truth as a means of hurting other people. Loving kindness is always most important. Okay, so on this note, this particular chapter, it says one more important thing. It's, of course, and I think this question was also asked in the chat some time ago, how do you save yourself? How do you resist these thoughts? How do you prevent it thoughts? So it's possible to protect yourself to a great extent from the incursion, from the coming in of these thought forms from outside by making a wall around oneself, around the aura. Mental matter, as we have seen, responds very readily to the impulse of thoughts and may easily be molded into any shape that we will. So it's basically giving you a technique over here. This book is saying that if you want to protect yourself from negative thoughts from coming in, just imagine that there's a wall around your mental body, around your aura, which prevents negative thoughts from coming in. And the mental matter very quickly responds to thought. So if you just say, okay, there is a wall around my aura which prevents any negative thoughts from coming in, you've probably created it right there, as easily as that. So while I take a sip of water, you might want to experiment with creating a wall around yourself. Actually, maybe don't experiment with that, because if you make a mistake and then whatever else I say will bounce off the wall. So forget I said that. May all the walls be gone right now. So it depends again on how strong your thought form is, how strong your clarity of thought is. If you say, I've created a wall, okay, you've created a wall. How strong? How long will it last? It depends on how clear your mind is. Okay, so how long will it last? How strong will it be? It depends again on the clarity. Remember the three main things of the thought form: the clarity of the thought, the intention of the thought, and the quality of that. So that depends on how clear your purpose is. Now, they use this term shell. If you look on the slide, it says nevertheless to use a shell for oneself. You can substitute the word maybe shield, okay, to make it less confusing. So you may use a shield for yourself, but using a shield is basically saying that you're weak. Because the best protection of all is to be someone who is radiating goodwill and purity all the time. So even if there's any negativity, it just gets swept away. So rather than spend so much time in creating a shield this or creating a protection that, just be good, just be nice. Radiate this goodness and niceness, so any negativity that comes towards you just gets wiped off. The occasions, now there are certain occasions when it might be necessary to use a shield, and they've used these 4 examples. Now mind you, this book is pretty old, so the examples, take it with a pinch of salt. You can use a shield for yourself when entering a promiscuous crowd. So if you're planning on going partying or going to a disco or even eating out, you never know what kind of people might be there, so create a shield around yourself. You might want to create a shield in meditation to prevent other thoughts from coming in. But then the disadvantage of that is if you create a shield in meditation, you might be blocking some good thoughts from coming in as well. Again, your mind must be that clear that, okay, only specific vibration of thoughts vibrating at this frequency, in that state of matter, it's just very complicated. It makes the thing really, really complicated. So, the book suggests this, the book gives its examples. Use it where it's applicable. Just because it says so, don't accept it. Just because it says so, apply your own discretion. You may create a shield when sleep is approaching, and under special conditions where without a shield, negative thoughts will be likely to come in. Now, yes, here it makes sense. If you're going into a meeting and you're expecting there's going to be a lot of verbal conflict, there's going to be a lot of confrontational things, then yeah, you might decide that a shield is necessary so that you don't get affected. Sure. But again, case-to-case basis. So a shield has distinct uses when helping other people, and an invisible helper, within quotes, will frequently find it invaluable in helping a person who doesn't yet have the strength to protect himself. So angelic beings, higher beings in the astral world, if you remember in the study sessions on the astral plane, we had a lot of these people who were talking about, we had a lot of people on the astral plane who would be coming in to help, and you would have to discern whether they were helpers, whether they were genuine well-wishers or something else. So you will have a shield, and you will attract, because the moment you put up a shield, you will attract the attention of other invisible people who may want to help you, or those who may be pretending to help you, or those who may actually want to hurt you. So there is no doubt that shields are necessary, but it is better, the best kind of shield is to have so much goodness, so much purity, that any negativity which comes in will simply be swept away. On this point, they come to a very interesting side story, that there seems to be no doubt that animals live in a world of emotion, okay? They possess a telepathic faculty of sending emotional impulses to others of their own species, of their own kind, at a distance. Example, there's a person named William J. Long, who wrote a book called How Animals Talk. And he states that he has reason to believe that this method of silent communication is the common language of the whole animal kingdom. That the animals, they communicate actually via telepathy. And numerous examples are given by this writer in this book. There's an Irish setter, a species of dog, a breed of dog, named Don, who always appeared to know when his master was returning home, even at unusual and unexpected times. So if you have any pets, especially if you have dogs, you will find that if you're at the entrance of your house, or if you're at the entrance of your apartment, maybe you've even turned into the lane, someone at home automatically knows, by the behavior of your pet, that okay, you're about to come home. Again, personal example, I have some dogs at home, and if my mom's gone out, my mom's a teacher, so she's gone to school, and I'm here at my desk, I'm working, and I hear suddenly the dogs are shuffling, they're barking. Okay, and they've got the shuffle that they do where they're very excited that someone's come home. And I'm like, hey, hang on, it's too early. Next thing I know, I hear the front door and mom's come home. I'm like, okay. So the dogs, even before I sensed it, the dogs, they sensed it 5 or 10 minutes in advance that she was there. Why? Because they're so deeply emotionally connected. And that is telepathy. We have a bond of love with our pets, don't we? We love our pets. So my mom loves the dogs at home. They love her back. We love each other. So that energy is constantly communicated. Now let's try to take this example from the animals kingdom and try to extrapolate a little bit for the human species. If you have someone whom you dearly, dearly love, like, as I think someone asked in the chat some time back, the bond between mother and child. If the child is in distress, the bond of love will telepathically communicate it to the parent. And the parent will know, the mother usually knows, that, okay, something's gone wrong. Maybe the child needs help. So if any of you who are parents here, any of you who are children over here, you'll probably know how, if you're feeling down, how you're feeling out, someone with love will contact you asking, hey, what's up? Is everything okay? Okay. Right, we've done this. Now the next part. Okay, this is the most interesting slide in this entire, actually personally, I think this is the most interesting thing in the whole book, because it tells you about the practical, the test of how you can do telepathy. So how do you do telepathy? Are you interested in this? For this, you need two people. There are two experimenters. And these two experimenters, they should agree on a time which is mutually convenient, and they should allocate 5, 10, or 15 minutes every day for the experiment. Each of them should then keep themselves free from any interruptions. So they look at their clocks, they look at their timings, and they say, okay, every day at this time, we will meet for 5, 10, 15 minutes and do the experiment. What is the experiment? One person will project the thought and the other person will receive the thought. In most cases, it's desirable to alternate these roles. Okay, one person projects today, receives tomorrow. The other person projects today or receives today, projects tomorrow. Keep alternating the two. Why? Because if one person becomes the projector at all times, then they become super, super good at transmitting, but they can't receive. Or the other person becomes super, super passive and receiving, and they can't transmit. So it only works if they're in each other's proximity. But if the receiver has to transmit a message, boom, communication failure. So practice. There must be balance. You can't just be a transmitter. You can't just be a receiver. Now, the next part. The transmitter should select a thought, which may be anything from an abstract idea to a concrete object or even a simple geometrical figure. The concentrator, the transmitter, should then concentrate upon it and create a will to impress upon his friend. So you have an object that you're looking at. So for example, there is an object in my room over here in my library, which I'm looking at. It has a very definitive shape. It has a very definitive color. It's like if I see it, I know that's exactly what I am looking at. And if I create this thought, and if every one of you are very receptive, you're willing to absorb the energy transmission which I'm sending, then as I send the thought, you will receive it. I'm not actually sending the thought right now. So if you're sitting down in a very relaxed pose, waiting for me to transmit the thought to you, I'm not doing that right now. I'm just explaining the mechanism of it. But if you want, maybe if everyone is okay with it, we can try doing that experiment. Now, before we go into more details, it should be very, very necessary to mention that the mind must be absolutely concentrated. Okay, it must be absolutely concentrated and described as one-pointedness. Okay, one-pointedness. Before we go into more details, let's talk a little bit about one-pointedness. What is meditation? What is the difference between concentration and meditation? If you ask an ordinary person and you say, okay, describe meditation to me, you go to an ordinary person who has no experience about these things and tell them, what do you understand by meditation? So they'll say, we sit down in that posture and we sit in a dark room and there's maybe some om chanting going on. There's some incense. Okay, it's dark, but you got this candle and it's flickering and, you're concentrating on it at all time. And you look at this person and say, that's the opposite of what meditation is. Meditation, okay, if I have to show you, this is you. Okay, this is you, your concentration. This is the whole of you. You take your awareness and you expand it, and your awareness goes everywhere. You've taken your awareness and you've expanded it and it goes everywhere. That is meditation. Be still, be aware. Concentration is when you have the awareness of everything going around you, but it is fixed to one single point. So from one point to everywhere, meditation. From everywhere to one point, concentration. It is concentrated. So meditation is when the awareness, when the consciousness expands. Concentration is when it is fixed, when it is one pointed upon a single subject. Any person who is inexperienced, who doesn't have any practice, they are usually not very good at it because there's a tendency, an automatic tendency for their mind to waver, for their attention to waver, to falter. And therefore, it makes them strain because the mind falters, they try to bring it back, they don't succeed, they find themselves thinking about God knows what. Maybe they're thinking of bills, maybe they're thinking of their lover, maybe they're thinking of food, and I get distracted every time I mention food. So anyway, it causes a lot of fatigue. So for a person to be willing to transmit, the person must be really, really good at concentrating. And for the person who must receive, must be really, really good at meditating upon receiving. So both dhyana and dharana, because it mentions Patanjali, Patanjali is the person who wrote the Yoga Sutras. So there are different types of yoga. One of the tenets, the 8 limbs, Ashtanga Yoga, is the first tenet is dhyana or dhyan, where awareness is expanded. And the second step is dharana, where you take something and you hold it and you concentrate it. So a person who is going to be good at telepathy, who wants to practice telepathy, they must have both meditation, awareness, and concentration or one-pointedness. For those of you who are doing Arhatic Yoga, the terms of meditation and dhyan and one-pointedness should be very, very, very familiar terms to you. And I hope with the talking about the mental body and the application of it, a new sense of appreciation develops where you understand that the application of these techniques are really, really practical and they can help you to go really, really far in your spiritual journey. So people can be talking about clairvoyance, about claircognizance and clair this and clair that. You as a student, as a spiritual student, will know exactly what it is and the mechanism behind it. So you'll no longer just be spiritually curious, you'll be a person who is actively working on evolving their own spiritual development. Okay, next part on the concentration, the next step. The receiver should make their body as comfortable as possible. Why? Because if there's any kind of physical unease or distraction, then the attention will waver and the mind will no longer be blank. It'll be disturbed again. So you have to practice again to actually relax. Now it shouldn't be so relaxed that the person falls asleep. So I could be sitting here transmitting thoughts like anything. All of you are like, I had a wonderful nap. Not very good telepathy. It's very good for relaxation, but it's not very good for telepathy. But the moment the thought appears, the moment any idea appears, they should write it down. They should write the idea down, whatever they've noted, so that they only absorb the information and they can block out all kinds of other garbage. So the transmitter, of course, should also keep a record of the thoughts that they transmit. The receiver will keep a record of the thoughts that they receive. At the end of the practice, they will compare notes. They should practice this every single day. At the end of a certain amount of time, that's when they should compare notes. Otherwise, what happens if I do the experiment now and the receiver does and compares the results then and there, then a kind of feedback mechanism gets established and you start anticipating, guessing what it might be. One time I was doing this experiment with some other friends and I said, okay, we'll think of a number between 1 to 9. Okay, we'll guess up a number between 1 to 9. The other person said, yes, I've got the number. You thought of 777. Like, what? It's because a lot of preconceived ideas, they come in. Think of one number, everyone thinks of something else. So being in a state of stillness is a prerequisite towards developing telepathy. Would you like to actually experiment? Is it permissible to experiment? We've already been speaking for more than an hour, and we'll still have quite some time because this is the second last session for concluding this book. Then the next session will be the bonus topics. So are we willing to do an experiment? Yes or no? Yes, no? Okay. All right. So now we are moving on to the next topic. The next topic talks about consciousness. So if you have sent thoughts, transmitted and received thoughts, where does it go? Here we're talking about consciousness. Now, as every part of the physical body has its corresponding astral and mental counterparts, it is logical to say that a coarse or a rough or a gross physical body will also have a tendency to make the mental body gross and impure. So you have to keep in mind that there are 7 grades of matter, and they correspond respectively to the 7 grades of physical as well as astral as well as mental matter. And the mental body would be more affected by the effects, by the materials we put into the physical body. So basically what it's saying is a gross mental body correspondingly will have a gross physical body, and a gross physical body correspondingly will give rise to a gross mental body. So coarse foods and drinks, they will tend to produce a coarse mental body. So a lot of meat, flesh foods, a lot of alcohol and tobacco, they are harmful to the physical, astral and mental bodies. The same rule applies to nearly all kinds of drugs. I found this word really interesting, nearly all kinds of drugs. Not all, nearly all. Why? Because certain drugs, in this case the example given is of opium, if it is taken in order to relieve pain, it should be taken as less, as sparingly as possible. A person who knows the techniques, they can remove the negative effects of opium from the mental and astral bodies after it has done the work on the physical body. So certain kinds of drugs need to be utilized, according to the authors, for certain physical things, but the effect should be neutralized from the astral, from the mental bodies, after it has done the work on the physical. Furthermore, a person who eats a lot of meat and drinks a lot of alcohol is quite liable to become unhealthy, to become disbalanced when the higher energies, when the higher consciousnesses open up. In fact, this is because the higher consciousness is trying to express itself through bodies which are clogged up with flesh and with alcohol. So the more refined our diet is, the easier, if you become partially vegetarian or completely vegetarian, it is going to be easier for the higher soul, for the subtler energies to be able to express itself. Otherwise, it's going to end up with what you call a radical reaction, where a very gross person tries to do a lot of meditation, tries to awaken the higher faculties, ends up with some kind of great disease or some great amount of problems. Okay? Protection, therefore, of consciousness can be afforded in the way of talismans or amulets. These have already been described in the books on the etheric body, the etheric double and the astral body. Briefly, how do talismans and amulets operate? They radiate waves of their own, which are intrinsically very, very helpful. And the knowledge of the presence, okay, that there's a person, suppose they have a talisman, knowing that they have a talisman. Now, what is a talisman? It could be an object. It could be a ring, could be a locket, could be a stone that you carry in your pocket. Oh, that was a nice poem. So these talismans, the knowledge that these talismans are there to protect and to help, they awaken a faith and courage within the wearer, and it calls upon them the strength of their own will. If a talisman is linked, energetically linked with the maker, and the wearer calls upon the maker mentally, the soul of the maker will respond and reinforce the vibrations of the talisman with a much stronger wave of its own powerful thought. So in India, at least, this example can be given. There are a lot of fakirs or a lot of spiritual holy men. Okay, babas and sadhus and fakirs and saints who create talismans. You go to them, they don't charge a fee or anything. They just, people pay them out of their own free will. They'll make something for you, a talisman, and they'll give it to you. It could be for reducing anger, it could be for getting into a good relationship, could be for business, whatever, all kinds of things. Those people, they wear the talisman and they feel the benefit of it. It could be entirely a placebo effect, it could be entirely a psychological effect. But the mechanism of it is that if a very spiritual person creates an object of protection for you, it's blessed and it is consecrated, and you have it, then the energy of the creator comes to you and actually helps enhance the protective power. So a talisman, which is very strongly charged up with energy, could well be an invaluable help. The physical nature, as well as the emotions and the mind, they all need to be mastered. And the physical state of existence is, of course, the most difficult to deal with. Now, some people, they have no regard for such things as talismans. They can scorn it. Other people, they found spirituality to be so difficult or complicated that they say, okay, you know what, I'll take any help that comes to me. So that's why you'll have a lot of people who take this crystal or that crystal, this stone and that stone, and they're like constantly they're carrying this army of crystals and gauntlets with them, so that they can be taken care of, progressing spiritually through stones. So that is about extra protection. On the same note, it talks about a person's mental body and mental development in connection to their environment. So a person is affected by the walls and furniture of their rooms because by the thoughts, by the feelings which they're constantly radiating around them, the physical objects, they start absorbing those energies. So any person who walks into a room in which there's a lot of meditation happening, a lot of healing happening, they will feel the energy and vibrations of the room to be that way. But if a person walks into a room where the couple is constantly fighting or there's constant disagreement, they will feel that stress, they will feel that anxiety whenever they come in. So if you've ever walked into, say, a hospital or a prison, you will feel the energy sucking you down, pulling you down, because it is so heavy. Because the people over there, they're always concerned, always anxious, always upset, and you will not feel that sense of relaxation. If you go to a hospital, certain hospitals, you'll feel very anxious all the time. Why? Because the entire energy of the environment is clogged up with that kind of thought and feeling. On the other hand, if you go to a place, maybe a sea beach or a mountain resort, or even a beautiful church, any place which has a lot of good thought forms, a lot of good energy, you go there, you automatically start feeling very light, you automatically start feeling very good. So, in the context of talismans, in the context of energy, the book says that a human being, persons, are affected also by the color of the objects which surround him. So, just as a feeling or thought produces a certain color, conversely, the presence of a color will produce that appropriate emotion. So, if you have a very red color, you will feel a certain amount of strength. If you have a lot of blue color, you'll feel a certain amount of sleepiness or sedation. So just as emotions produce colors, colors conversely also produce emotions. So some people, they are naturally attracted towards certain colors. They will always wear like blue. They always prefer to wear blue. It could be because they're seeking to be calm, or it could also be that they're already calm and the color is something that just naturally attracts to them. So the rationale, for example, of the Christian church, they use certain colors in their altar, in their vestments, in their clothing, in their preparation. It is to induce the condition and condition the mind and generate a feeling appropriate to the occasion. Hence, the value of holy places where the atmosphere is literally vibrating at a very high rate of vibration. A room specifically set apart for meditation and studies soon gains an atmosphere which is purer and subtler than that of the surrounding. And the wise student, an informed student, will take advantage of this for their own sake and for helping other people. So, if you're a healer, if you are a person with spiritual interest, have a room dedicated to your spiritual practice where that's the only thing you do in that room. You keep your books there, you do your studies there, you do your healings over there. That room will automatically start to acquire the loftier vibration. So, anytime you walk in, your aura automatically takes on that higher rate of vibration. This is, of course, one of the tenets of feng shui, or the energy sciences for environment, or vastu, where the environment has an impact on the user. and vice versa, the user has an impact on the environment. On the same note, of course, if we're talking about the positive, we must also deal with the negative, which is that there's certain places which are considered to be unlucky. Why? Because accidents have happened and the people have accumulated the thought form, the feeling of accidents happening all the time. So the feeling of bad luck comes on for no other reason. So these vibrations, they happen because we influence it, and because we influence it, they have an effect on us, the law of cause and effect. So you've got a question over here in the chat. Can the maker of the talisman also influence the wearer in a negative way? In that case, it is no longer a talisman, but it is something for dark magic or manipulation. So a person who's creating a talisman, by definition, is for protection, it's for help. You won't create a talisman so that they can go and hurt someone later on. That's not the purpose of the talisman. Okay. There are many stories, of course, connected to talismans. There are lots of stories. Sometimes a stone or a crystal is given to someone for protection. And there is one particular incident which really affects the person psychologically. Okay. Suppose something happens. The stone vanishes after that. Maybe it was in their bag, maybe it was kept at home. It vanishes or it falls down and breaks. Why? Because the stone acted as a talisman and it absorbed the negative energy, the negative vibration, and it got disintegrated, or it fell down, or it got lost. So, at least in the Indian context, a lot of people say that if the stone or crystal has vanished, it's done its work. So you are safe and you are protected from any negativity. So what should you do? Probably get a new stone. Okay, I am going to quickly slide back up to the beginning where we're going to talk this tale of contents. We've covered all of these: conscious thought transference, mental healing thought centers. Again, you can induce healing. This is it's a small thing over here, but in the book, it's a relatively smaller portion. When you can think of a person, we can imagine white light going to the person and healing the person completely. If there's any negative influence, any negative health, you can consciously, by your mental body, by your thoughts, you can induce a statement, a sensation of health and wellness, causing the other person to become healthier. So we spoke about concentration, we spoke about meditation, contemplation, sleep life, and the Mayavi Roop. Small portions of it we will cover in the next session. And also in the next session, we'll quickly cover the bonus topics on Devachan, the details of Devachan, the subplanes, and the Akashic records. So we've already covered all of these topics in the last few sessions. And in the next session, the last session, before we go on the small break for Diwali, we'll be covering the bonus topics and the last parts about contemplation, sleep life, and the Mayavi Roop. So that's where we are today. What we've covered so far, we've done with all of this: the talismans, the mechanism of thought transference, how it works. The key takeaway from this session: you should have a very refined energy. You should always be thinking lofty thoughts so that negative thoughts, negative emotions cannot affect you, cannot impact you. That's number one. Number two, for the practice of telepathy, the mechanism of thought transference, you must be very good at concentration as well as very good at meditation. You must be able to receive as well as to give. The cycle of giving and receiving must be very well balanced. There are numerous other mechanisms. We've gone through all of this. If there are any questions, please do put them in the chat. And the session's gone on for 1.5 hours. So if there are any further questions, now is a good time to take them. Otherwise, we shall end the session for today. So just quickly scrolling through the chat. Is there anything which I've missed? Okay. All right then. So if there are no further questions, let us end the session with a prayer of thanks. Inhale. Inhale slowly. Inhale deeply. Be aware of your whole body. We studied today about the pineal gland. Bring your awareness to the pineal gland. If you know where it's located, well and good. If not, simply say, I am aware of my pineal gland. And now expand your consciousness, expand your awareness, bring your consciousness outside your body, bring your consciousness up, floating. See your body below you. You can see the room that you're in. Float higher and higher. Float out of the building. You can see the entire locality that you live in. You can see your entire city. You can now see the clouds, the oceans around you. You can see the whole of planet Earth. You can see the other planets in the distance. You can see the sun. And you can feel a sense of oneness with all of us here in this group, with the whole world, with all the persons, all beings, with the help and blessings of God, with the help and blessings of my spiritual teacher, all the spiritual teachers, the holy gurus, holy masters, saints, archangels, holy angels, and spiritual helpers. With the help of my higher soul, I thank you for your priceless blessings of love, light, and power, for your blessings of love and wisdom, for knowledge, for enlightenment, for bringing to me the awareness that I am the soul, that I am a spiritual being of divine intelligence, divine love, and divine power, and for helping me operate out of this awareness at all levels, at all times. Thank you for giving me an opportunity to be part of this group, that I may learn, that I may share, that I may become a better person and a better soul, and that I may help, actively help more and more people to also become better persons and better souls. I thank you in full faith, with gratitude, with deep, deep gratitude, with deep respect, and with love, with lots of love, with all our love. I thank you. Now take a deep breath. Mentally visualize all your classmates, visualize all the people in your family, your loved ones, your work, all the people you are directly connected with, all the people you are indirectly connected with, every person on earth, every person, every being. And feel a sense of oneness and say, I'm happy you're here. Spiritually, there is only oneness. Physically, there's the illusion of separation, but spiritually, we are one. I am a child of God. I am connected to God. I am one with God. I am one with all. I am that I am. Take a deep breath. And as you exhale, share your light with the whole of the universe. Inhale once more. And as you exhale, share the light with the whole of planet Earth. Inhale once more. And as you exhale, share the light with your whole country. Inhale. And share the light with the area you live in. Inhale once more. And as you exhale, share the light with your family and loved ones. Inhale once more. And as you exhale, share the light in your causal body, your mental body, your astral body, your etheric body, and your physical body. Inhale once more. And be aware of your physical body. Be aware of your hands, your legs, your fingers, and your toes. Open your eyes with a smile. Atma, namaste. Thank you for being here. See you in the next session. Take care.